Hey everyone, Lobo. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on the Strait of Hormuz situation that we got going on and see if anybody else agrees with me. So I actually sat and looked up what the current demographics are for the Strait of Hormuz, and this is what I got. So according to this, before the UNCLOS, the traditional coastal states claimed only about 3 nautical miles of territorial sea, which make perfect sense. That means anything that's 3 miles outside of the land that you call home as far as a country is yours to own. And that makes it so that way nobody can invade your area beyond the 3 miles. Well, apparently after the UNCLOS was introduced in order to make international waters extend like a little shorter, or like territorial waters to be a little bit longer, it has increased the territorial waters to about 12 nautical miles, which, 12 miles versus 3 miles, that's a significant difference, but it's not that big, especially when you have a country that has full border of water. Now, it's a little different in this situation, especially with the Strait of Hormuz, because the Strait of Hormuz is only 21 nautical miles wide. So, between Oman and Iran, with 21 miles of room to work with each other, they have encapsulated the entirety of the Strait of Hormuz. And that wouldn't be so bad if there was actually places for the international waters to travel through, but the Strait of Hormuz is like the key, it's a key route for most supply shipping routes. And I want to show you something that made it very interesting to point out. If you look here at this different map, it shows actual shipping routes or shipping lanes that is taken with the current UNCLOS in consideration. And the majority of the shipping lanes are on the side of the Oman when it comes to where their territorial water is. Now, I want people to consider this as a situation to think about when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz and the war with Iran. If the war with Iran taught us anything, it showed that Iran was lying about their military weapons. It told us they were lying about their not military, but their missiles capabilities. And it also means that they have been known to have issues when it comes to the travel lane in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that wouldn't be too bad if they were just increasing let's talk about the uranium, if they were only increasing the uranium for the energy purposes. However, we've proven that they were doing more than just, the bare minimum 2 to 3% for energy purposes, which is like what the majority of countries do with the uranium. They had increased it to about 60%. Well, whenever somebody goes to 60%, you would want to go to 70%, 70% to 80%, 80% to 90%, 90% to eventually you have nuclear weapons. Now, we have evidence, like histories of information that showed that the Iran, or the Islamic regime that was currently in charge, Iran, had a history of saying death to America, death to Israel, death to anybody, death to infidels in general. And if they have in their scriptures a prescription to hurt anybody that was not part of the Muslim faith, then most would come to the conclusion, especially given the fact that they had already done terrorist acts as far as suicide bombers and 9/11 and other examples like October 7th, that kind of thing. It would lead most logical people to conclude that they might be doing something a little below the belt or not above water. And because of that, it would, logically lead people who are as a little bit, I don't want to say unhinged, but almost a little bit intense, like Trump, to come to the conclusion that they're building nuclear weapons that would destroy America, and actually use as a threat to overtake all of the Strait of Hormuz. Like, people are saying that the Strait of Hormuz was open. Then why weren't they using a travel lane on the Iran side of the territorial line when it comes to the waters, because there's not international waters. There's right next between Iran and Oman. There is there's nothing. It's border on border, almost like a country in the water. But if it was totally 100% straight, why do you think Trump would feel the need to get involved? Well, this is my thought process, because I thought about it and I considered it. And let's take an analogy here. Let's say you live in this neighborhood right here, and you can see that it's like a one-way road or something like that. You can go back or you can go forward, and that's it. There's no turns. There's no other additional ways to get in and out of this neighborhood. And let's say you live in this house right here, and you decided, I own the sidewalk that's in front of my house, or at least I'm in charge of it, and you can consider that to be like your territory line, if you were to say these houses were countries. And you are fully aware that the neighbor across the street from you owns his sidewalk and everything, and you guys find out that you guys had increased property lines that extended out to the road, and now you share the road. And let's pretend that the other country, the other houses nearby, they don't exist. There's just let's say farmland or something like that. But that's how the property lines are set up. So you have a portion of the road that is part of the control of the state or the city or wherever you live. And you are only in charge of this section. Now, let's say you wanted to make it so that way people couldn't cross there, because it was interfering with noise or something like that, or the people who are using the road are super rude, disrespectful, or it seems super rude and everything, but most people that would do something like this would be labeled underneath Karen or something like that. But that said, you want to make it so that way people can't just cross there freely. So you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to build a toll booth here, and I'm going to make it so that way people have to pay a toll to pass through my portion of the road. And even though your neighbor across the street doesn't have a problem with it, you're just like, I'm going to take over your portion of the road. And you hold him at gunpoint, saying, no, you're going to give me your portion of the road, even if they say, but I don't want to. It doesn't matter. I want to do this because I'm sick and tired of people using my portion of the road and not considering my feelings just because I don't believe the same things they do, or I don't believe they're good allies. I believe I should get compensation for people just driving in front of my house. Logically, you're not allowed to do that unless it's 100% a private road. You can't just take over a portion of the road for 10, 20 feet with a toll when it's not really truly your property. But you have a gun, and who's going to stop you? Okay. Now, one would say, the international waters, let's say, or not international. One would say the city or the state would get involved and be like, hey, we use this road all the time. It's a very common road. We'd have to go thousands upon thousands of miles out of our way in order to get anywhere. So no, you can't block this off. So one would think that, the state or the city would be intervene and stop them. Well, let's say they had managed to, upgraded their gun to a full missile or a tank or something very threatening that you can't just, 100% contest and fight them against it. Even if it was a civil battle that turned into a more criminal kind of battle. What do you do then? Now you have to take something a little more serious. You have to consider, the people around you. You have to consider the neighbor across the street. You have to consider if they're, some of these houses were still there. Not all of them are gone, but some of them are still there. Now you have to consider their safety and everything. And let's say this person wasn't just, known as a Karen, but they have a little bit of a track record of being a serial offender and possibly on crack. Now you have somebody who's super dangerous, who managed to get their hands on something military grade and are threatening, people's lives in order for them to, even use the road. They have to pay a toll or die. What do you do? That's how I view what's going on with the Iran war in the Strait of Hormuz, is that Iran has a portion of the property, and he is there. I imagine with especially their religious aspects. I know it's not every Muslim, not every Islamic. I'm specifically specifying whenever I talk about this.
What up, baby?
the radical regime and the radical, like, Islamist. Radical. Like, you can have a good cop, you can have a bad cop, you can have an extreme cop, or you can have a neutral cop. You can have the same thing with the right. You can have extreme Republicans and you have neutral Republicans. You can have extreme left and or extreme Democrats and normal Democrats. Like, everybody is not one way or another when the label is out and about. But it's those labels that should be taken consideration when we're talking about specific groups. So I'm fully aware all Muslims are like this. I'm fully aware of that. I know that a lot of Muslims are very peaceful people. However, it's the radical extremists that are in charge of the government, like Iran, when it comes to, like, the IRGC, and then we got Hamas, and then, like, Al-Qaeda, for example. That's another one that we took care of back in the day. I don't know if it's still going around. I haven't paid attention to Al-Qaeda. I'm focused on IRGC and Iran. But it's these types of groups that make it so it puts people in a bad viewpoint of a specific religion. But if they are taking 100% extremist actions against just normal civilians, not only, like, in other countries, but in their freaking country, their current country, you know, the 40,000 or 45,000 protesters that died in 2 days, I can't imagine what they would do with people who don't live with them. So that's where I stand on this, is that we should be interfering, and Trump, in his own way, foresaw a potential catastrophe that could essentially make it so that way Iran can chokehold everybody into submission, or we go into a massive war that involved multiple countries, not just USA versus Iran and Israel, versus, like, USA and Israel versus Iran. No, multiple countries, like, downright next World War III. People are saying that this situation right here could have been the World War III. What if Iran had a nuclear missile? Would it be World War III then? Because one of Iran's friends, who are they? Russia and China and Venezuela. Those are the top three. Who were one of the people that Trump went after recently before Iran? Venezuela. What about Cuba? Cuba's not on the list. Cuba was also an ally of Iran. And the people that the UK says we need to be worried about, Russia. Russia got most of the military weapons from Iran. What are you going to say about that, UK? Now you got the Russians, like, knocking on your doorstep in the water. In international waters, like, they're allowed to be there, but hey, they're knocking on your door, taking a peek underwater. Now what? So it's just something to consider, because that's the analogy I best put it, and it just makes me confused when people don't understand the significance of this, because there is a such thing as being proactive rather than reactive. I rather our country, the United States, be proactive, get a couple names thrown at us, and everything is back to normalcy. Like, we're back to usual business, rather than being reactive and having to fight a nuclear war with somebody that we already knew had issues with us, but we did nothing about it to stop them from getting the gun. What up, baby? So that's my thoughts on it. That's where I stand on it. You can just tell me what your thoughts on it. Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you stay this long, have yourself a good day. Bye.